Okay, so Sarah and Aidan have just escaped from the van, and for me, this marks kind of like the second half of the book where we really start to get deeper into the mystery of what exactly the bridge to Neverland is. So the first half, we spend the time kind of piecing together this mystery of how do these children connect to the Starcatchers, and now we really get into exactly what is the bridge to Neverland and how exactly does this work. Like the authors usually do, they try to tie it into some real world things to make it really come alive. And some of those things are a little bit complex. They have to do with physics and other scientific areas. So we'll do our best to kind of explain them and understand what exactly we're talking about. So chapter 20 is called Mac. They flew as far and as fast as they could. Sarah and Aidan doing the steering, trying to avoid lights, and JD between them, still feeling quite relaxed. They passed over what looked like a river, although JD, acting as an aerial tour guide, informed them that it was actually a long, narrow, winding lake called Lake Carnegie. About a mile later, the star stuff began to wear off, and they gently descended into a dense stand of trees. The landing was not a thing of beauty. They bumped into some branches on the way down, dislodging JD, who turned a slow, mid-air cartwheel before stumbling to the ground. "Are you okay?" said Sarah, alighting next to him. "I think so," said JD, sitting up. Aidan landed next to Sarah. "Where are we?" he said. "The Plainsboro Preserve," said JD. "It's a natural reserve. There's a reservoir over that way." "Great," said Aidan. "We have nature and water. Now all we need is food and shelter and, oh yeah, some way to stop everybody in the world from looking for us. I mean, we made the police van fly. Then we flew. We're going to be all over the news." "In which case," said Sarah, "Umbra will definitely find out. Not to mention that the police will be very unhappy with us," said Aidan. "Especially me," said JD, who was feeling less than happy now that he was on the ground. "They think I kidnapped you." "Listen," said Sarah, "we can get you out of this. You go back, turn yourself into the police, and then we call from a payphone and explain that you never did anything wrong, that it was all our idea. They have to believe us because you surrendered." "Nope," said JD. "I'm okay. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm a star catcher. We can sort it out when this is all over, but right now we need to figure out what to do about the star stuff so this Umbra dude doesn't get a hold of it." "If you saw him," said Aidan, "I don't think the word dude would come to mind." There was no response from Sarah or JD, who looked into each other's eyes. Sarah realized that her hand was on his arm, and she quickly dropped it. "Okay," she said, "we need to get away from here." "Is there a train station nearby?" "That's a bad idea," said Aidan. "They'll be watching the train stations and airports." "Then what?" "We need a car," said Aidan. "But I don't see any at the moment." "I think I know somebody who might be able to help us," said JD. "Who?" "Well, he's a retired physics professor, Alan McPherson, an old family friend. He kind of mentored me when I joined the Princeton faculty. He lives in Monmouth Junction, not too far from here." "Do you trust him?" said Aidan. "Yup," said JD. "He was really tight with my granddad and dad. Besides, at this point, we don't really have a lot of choices." "Okay. Which way?" "North," said JD, also getting up. "Which way is north?" "That way," said JD. "I hope." A half hour later, after some meandering, they came to a modest house in an old subdivision. JD rang the bell, and for a minute, the porch light came on, and the door was opened by a gaunt, elderly, white-haired man in pajamas. "Hello, JD," he said, giving no indication that he was surprised by the visit. "Hello, Mac. Sorry about the late hour." Mac waved his hand in apology. "Since Eleanor died, I hardly sleep anyway. Come in." Inside, JD introduced Aidan and Sarah to Mac. There was an uncomfortable pause, then JD said, "Mac, I need to ask a favor. I was wondering if I could borrow your car." "Okay." "Really?" "I never really used Eleanor's car anyway. I've been meaning to sell it. I barely use my own." "But, aren't you curious about why I need it? I assume you need it to get away from the police." "You know?" Mac pointed to the TV. "You were the top story on the 11 o'clock news. They've been showing photos of the three of you. And, of course, the flying police van." "Oh, no." "Oh, yes. There's video from someone's cell phone. There are all kinds of theories about what happened. Some of them are quite entertaining from a physics standpoint. One involved a giant magnet. They are very interested in speaking with the three of you, and I guess there will be some other people as well." JD looked troubled. "Maybe you shouldn't get involved with this, Mac. I don't think you know what you're getting into." "I know more than you might think. over the years your grandfather did me the honor of seeking my advice in certain matters, and I flatter myself in thinking that I might have been some help to your organization. I'm more than happy to help you now. So you know? You know about... Let's just say I know it wasn't a giant magnet. Mac, I don't know what to say, said J.D. No need to say anything. I'll get the keys to Eleanor's car. He left the room and returned a minute later with a set of car keys which he handed to J.D. I just hope it starts. Not that it's any of my business, but you know where you're going. Well, we haven't thought that far ahead yet, said J.D. Mainly we need to get somewhere safe away from here so we can figure out our next move. How about a cabin in North Carolina? What? We bought it when I retired. I haven't been there in a while, and another thing I've been meaning to sell. I'll go get the keys to that. 10 minutes later, with the help of jumper cables, Eleanor's car, an ancient green Volvo, was running. J.D. was at the wheel with Sarah at shotgun and Aidan in the back seat. I don't know how to thank you, Mac. Just stay safe, and if you need anything, get in touch. You remember my email address? Yes. Okay then, you better get moving. J.D. put the car in gear and eased it out of the driveway and onto the street. And as they drove away, Aidan and Sarah looked back at the fading figure of Mac, watching them, looking frail and ghostly in his white pajamas. I can't believe that old guy has email, said Aidan. Huh, said J.D. That old guy helped invent the internet. Now we switch to a new scene. The sergeant had stepped outside the Princeton police station for a few minutes to stretch his legs. It had been a very long, strange night, a flying police vehicle for heaven's sake, and the night was not going to end anytime soon with all the calls coming in from all over, including Washington, D.C. He walked a couple blocks, then stopped under a streetlight and looked at his watch. Time to get back. A bird landed on the sidewalk next to him, and the sergeant didn't know what kind it was, but it was black and unusually large. It seemed like any bird, bold. It stood for a few feet away from him and unafraid. A second bird landed on the sidewalk, and a third. The sergeant heard a rustling noise overhead, and he looked up and gasped. The roof of the two-story building he stood next to was lined with birds, hundreds of them. They're just birds, he thought to himself, feeling nervous and foolish, and he turned back towards the station. He had taken only a couple steps when he heard the furious beating of wings, followed by a rushing sound. Suddenly, the sidewalk was covered with black birds swarming on his shadow. He felt an awful chill creeping through his body, and he wanted to run and wanted to scream, but his legs would no longer move. No sound came from his mouth. He fought to keep his wits about him. Don't panic, he thought, but it was as if his very ability to think was being sucked out of him. And there was only one thought left: obey. Slowly, he trudged back towards the train station. Sam Clevey was working a cash toll booth on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. It was a boring job, but it had become less boring thanks to the advent of live TV streamed onto smartphones. Sam basically spent his days watching TV while taking tolls. He was really good at both. When the old green Volvo came through the booth, he had already seen the driver's face 100 times on TV. It was the kidnapper, the one involved with the crazy story about the flying police. Sam recognized these two. They didn't look like they were afraid of the kidnapper, but they were definitely the kids he saw on TV. So Sam handed the kidnapper his change, then reached down and pressed a red button used to photograph the license plate of the car currently in his bay. As soon as the car pulled away, he picked up the phone and called his supervisor. And then he went back to watching TV. And that's the end of the chapter. So in typical fashion, we make a little progress. Aidan and Sarah escape along with J.D. They seem to be in good shape, getting a car and a new location to travel to, but then things get worse as we find out that Ambra is taking the soul of a police sergeant, probably to get some information on the case, and that Aidan and Sarah and J.D. have been spotted by a toll taker on their way to North Carolina. So tomorrow's chapter is entitled The Bridge, and that should be a pretty good one. So we'll have a read aloud tomorrow, and then we'll make a decision as far as what we do with the remainder of the book, and try to present some options for you if you are interested in finding out the rest of the book once the school year has come to a close. All right.